Hey, welcome back everybody. Mr. Woodard here on a chilly afternoon. I'm going to lead you through the next 8 minutes of this video, and where Mr. Davis left off last time is one of my favorite concepts in psychology. That's projection. And the idea, I really want you to think about this because we're going to deal with this when we get to Freud. Projection means I have something going on in my head, and like a movie projector, I am projecting what's in my head onto whatever I see. So if I'm sad, I'm projecting sadness everywhere. If I have a high need for achievement, I am projecting a high need for achievement everywhere. So the idea is, the theory is, you're projecting what you're thinking onto that picture that you just watched. So we will revisit projection, but I love that idea. And there's a lot of projection. Freud would say a lot of how we interpret other people's feelings is us projecting our feelings onto them. Okay, now let's take a look at need for achievement, and I want to look at these two because I would be willing to bet that the scores on their need for achievement in these two would be very different. So individualistic cultures like America, Canada, a lot of Western cultures place a high value on personal achievement. The individual will succeed. I will be the best me I can be. I will self-actualize. I have rights. We're seeing this again a lot with the mask debate. I mentioned this before. So this is about me, and so I'm going to achieve the best that I can be, and the point of society is allowing people to reach their individual highest point. Obviously, you can see sometimes there's a conflict when your individual success steps on other people's toes. So we have the collectivistic culture, which is a very Eastern often. And the idea, they have a lower need for achievement. They value group loyalty over individual distinction. Their most important part on Maslow is attachment. Individual is self-actualization. That's why Maslow self-actualization is so high. But for collectivism, it's about how do I connect with other people. And responsibilities are more important than rights. Quick little piece of trivia. They showed a picture of an aquarium to a bunch of different people from individualistic and collectivistic cultures. The individualistic cultures pointed out the biggest fish, the individuals. The collectivistic cultures were much more likely to talk about how the fishes reacted with each other, and they were much more likely to talk about the environment. So individualistic cultures pick things out, and collectivistic cultures kind of look at the whole. And individualistic cultures will have a higher need for achievement, collectivist will have a lower. Now we're going to talk about motives and conflict. We're going to kind of go back to motives. And this is a really, I used to not teach this because I thought it was pretty obvious, but then it was on the test one year on the AP test, so I wanted to make sure that we got to that. So let's say you have a choice to make and you have motives in conflict with each other. The approach conflict is where you have two really good options. If somebody says, here are your two favorite restaurants. Where do you want to go out to dinner? That's an approach conflict. You want to approach both of them. And you say, well, here are your two favorite places. Which do you choose? Hey, that shouldn't be a tough choice. That's why I say from easier to harder. That's an easy choice to make. Approach avoidance conflict. That is where you weigh the pros and cons. In fact, if you're taking your notes in your guided notes, you should be doing pros and cons. So think about staying out late on a school night. You want to stay out late. You want to hang out with your friends. You want to watch a movie, do whatever you got to do. But you have homework to do. So you might do that T-chart, that classic T-chart, where you put all the pros on one side, all the cons on the other side, and you weigh those options. That's a little harder. Approach, it's like pick one. It's going to be great. Approach avoidance, it's like, oh, which decision do I make? Do I go out or do I stay home? The next conflict you're going to have is avoidance. And this is two bad decisions. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I have the train tracks, or they might call it the trolley car experiment. And it's a thought experiment. It didn't really happen. None of this ever happened. Let's imagine a train is going down a track and it's about to hit a group of people. That you don't have time. The train is hauling butt. You don't have time to stop the train. And it's either going to hit a bunch of people, or you could flip a switch and you can make the train go onto another track and it only kills one person. What do you do? Well, the problem with that is both of the options are not good. What's really interesting is, what is the logical thing for you to do? The logical thing is to say, well, one person dead is better than 5 people dead. but we have a hard time flipping that switch. We'll talk more about the trolley experiment later. It seems kind of weird, but the idea is it's really interesting. Sometimes our logic doesn't take over, that we do things that aren't logical because in our gut it just feels wrong. That's avoidance. Both of those options are bad, and you just have to decide which one is worse. And then multiple approach avoidance conflict. Boy, that's a tough one. And that's where you have, let's go back to that previous slide. So you say there's a pro and con to all of these options. And I think of that as picking a college. So let's say you want to go, you're going to go, am I going to go to Wazoo, UW, Eastern, maybe I'm going to go to a private school. Well, pros and cons. Private school, like Whitman down in Walla Walla. Great school. It's really small. Is that an approach, something you like, or an avoidance, something you don't like? It's in Walla Walla. Do you want to be in Walla Walla? You're doing a T-chart for Whitman. And then you go to UW. It's in Seattle. Huge school, huge city. Is that a plus or a con? You go to Wazoo. It's in Pullman. It's kind of a farm town. Plus or a con? So those are tough. That is the toughest. That's why we went from easiest, approach. Hey, I can approach both of those. I love them. This one's multiple approach avoidance. So you seniors who are sitting there right now thinking, what am I going to do? I know, that's a tough decision. I would just suggest really sitting down and doing a little T-chart for each one of those. Okay, we're about 6.5 minutes. I'll move on. We're going to start talking about stress. The stress response to perceived threat activates thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and physiological arousal that normally promote adaptation and survival. Let me translate that. Stress is often very good. Stress makes you run away from bears, makes you avoid snakes. It promotes our adaptation and survival. So stress, again, as we've talked about before, is not bad. There are certain types of stress that are bad, though, and let's start talking about that. Stress is a mental and physical response to a challenging or threatening situation. Maybe we'll watch this video coming up, but I'm not going to do it right now. And a stressor is a situation demanding an adaptation. In other words, an adaptation. You have to change. You have to adapt. So a stressor says, I need to do something different. I can't keep doing what I'm doing. And it's hard. Think about online school. For you, for me, that's a stressor. It's different. We have to adapt. Now, do we adapt quickly or do we adapt slowly? Well, that kind of depends on us, really. And a traumatic stressor, though, those are the ones that are really tough. You see the word trauma in traumatic stressor. It threatens your safety. It causes fear and helplessness. I had a student years ago, senior in my class, was mugged, held up, robbed at gunpoint in Manitou Park. Really caused a lot of problems in her life. That was a traumatic stressor. That's not like studying for a test. That's a stressor. Online school, that's a stressor. But when we talk about traumatic stressors, those are things that cause problems like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which we'll be talking about on another slide. But I've talked for 8 minutes, and I'm going to let Mr. Davis take it away.